invincible. I'm paying money. The girl's happy. She's got no money. I got my rocks off. Oh, how good is this?
You're on Bound for Glory on Sin 90.7 FM. I'm Jordan Kinneal.
I'm Ethan.
I'm Matt.
I'm Peter.
And I'm Damon.
And we got a big show this week. It's our 50th show, so we'll celebrate that anniversary. We got all this week's footy covered, as well as we're doing a segment on the Under-18s. So just looking at that competition so far and how I think TAC Cup and the national championships, which concluded this week. So it'll be good to analyse all the new draftees and the kids that are coming through that'll play AFL next year, so that'll be very interesting to look at. But Geelong Hawthorn last night, it was... I think Hawthorn walked in favourites. I don't know why. It was, the streak was up for grabs. Hawthorn won 12 games in a row. Geelong have won the past 10 against them, and it could have gone either way. And Geelong came out of the blocks. They dominated uncontested possession, and Hawthorn, they were pressured. Their disposal was well off, and they lost it in the first quarter, really.
And that's the interesting thing. Geelong and Hawthorn games usually go Hawthorn get a mile up and then Geelong come back and pip them on the siren or just before the siren. So the fact that Geelong were up by a mile, it was almost like, is this going to be a reverse? Are Hawthorn actually going to win this? But they managed to get the job done. That's 11 now. So
I think it's the only thing we haven't seen in the Geelong Hawthorn streak is that a Geelong lead, really falls. I suppose we had that game last year where Tom Hawkins kicked the winning goal. They kicked, they're up 50-10 at one point or something, but it was the last time we've seen, the only time we've seen a Hawthorn come back in the last quarter like that, and it was good football from Hawthorn, but too little too late, and Geelong surged and they ran away with the 4 points.
I really think that I thought that Brian Lake would be the difference, but he had an absolute shocker, especially in the first half. He was dropping marks, he was kicking it straight to Geelong players. It was very un-Lake-like.
I think he redeemed himself in the second half.
In the second half he did, but...
He was taking intercept marks, and he had good disposal of half-backs, so I did think he redeemed himself a bit, but his first half wasn't great.
And Hawkins didn't kick a goal the whole match, did he? He was pretty,
pretty disappointing year so far in comparison to last year, where he, really came onto the scene.
All-Australian Tom Hawkins didn't deserve it.
Yeah, but see, that's the thing. Like, Geelong still managed to beat the top of the table Hawks without their main goal scorer kicking any goals, which is pretty impressive. I'd be pretty happy if I was Geelong, saying, look, he's had no impact, but we've still won against the best side. So.
And it was interesting to see in the post-match as well. Chris Scott was asked about Sam Mitchell, who was arguably Hawthorn's best on ground, but he said he had a reasonable game. Not good, just reasonable. And I thought maybe they let him off the hook a bit, which I was happy about from a fantasy perspective. But
well, they sent Taylor Hunt in from the first bounce, and Mitchell was like, I'm not getting tagged today. And he has a good record against Hawthorn. He had 36. He had the ball on a string at some points, and still the commentators would look at Silrioli and wait till he was subbed on, which was quite hilarious. But Mitchell was great. I thought Jack Gunston really lifted in the last quarter. He had a couple of passages. That one where he ran along the boundary, kept it in, had a couple of hand passes and delivered it inside 50, I thought was fantastic. And, having that extra element, because, normally plays third tall forward, running through the midfield as well, I thought that was really important. And, players like Puopolo starting to find the ball a bit more. Sewell was okay, Lewis was good, and Hawthorn were okay, but probably just not a full team performance. I don't think everybody stood up.
And it's really funny watching Paul Puopolo, because you always think he's running so fast, but it's just the tiny legs just pumping really quickly. I'm like,
twice as quick as a normal person.
I want to see him running next to Lewis Jetta, because Lewis Jetta would take about 2 strides for Puopolo's 10, and it's bloody hilarious.
Jordan Murdoch for the Cats was great last night. Kicked 3 goals and was probably, I think he sealed the match in the end for him. He was great.
Well, I think, that's another part of the, I suppose, Tom Hawkins not being in form, is that Geelong have so many players that, can hit the scoreboard. It was Murdoch last night. We've seen, Selwood can kick goals, Christensen, Stokes, Motlop. They can all hit the scoreboard, and, it's so important having a variety of players that can do it and not relying on one tall target and Hawkins, because, it's very important come finals time.
They had 9 individual goal scorers, so that's massive.
And Corey Enright was back into form as well. He had a bit of a quieter start to the year, but in the past month or so, he's really stepped up again, and who knows, he could be AA again, number 5.
Well, I suppose the way Hawthorn were delivering inside 50, I suppose, was a little bit shaky. It was a little bit unassured, which is weird for Hawthorn. And Corey Enright was one of those players. He was chopping off marks, and Andrew Mackey was great as well, providing a bit of run off half back, and players like that were very important. They did a very good job defensively. Harry Taylor as well. He's probably in an All-Australian year as well. So they're doing very well down back.
And I mean, there just definitely has to be some kind of mental kind of thing with Hawthorn. There's no doubt about it. If they came up against Geelong in the finals, I know they beat them in the last final, the last grand final they played anyway, but there must be something there that the experienced players just can't get over.
These teams are first and second. There's every chance that they will meet in a preliminary final or a grand final. Who wins that?
Well, see, that's the thing. I would think if I was Hawthorn, you'd want Geelong to be out before you meet them, because I think Hawthorn would be backing themselves against any team except Geelong. And that's the thing. Some teams play better against Geelong than others. They match up better. It's just the way it happens. And Geelong match up really well on Hawthorn.
I don't think Geelong want to run to Collingwood in the finals.
No, that's the thing. Collingwood play really well against Geelong. They'll probably lose to some nobody, but they'll beat Geelong. So, and it's just the way they match up. It's previously Sydney was the same. But yeah, Collingwood meeting Hawthorn, that's just no point even discussing it. They'll get smashed. So
let's discuss some interesting decisions last night in terms of umpiring. The deliberate out of bounds first, then we'll talk about the interchange infringement. I can't remember who it was, but he kicked it so far, and it was probably 25 metres.
It was James Kelly, I think.
James Kelly, yep. And it was just, it was called deliberate out of bounds because it took a ridiculous turn. It was 25 metres inside the line and just bounced out, and it was called deliberate.
Well, what rhymes with Justin Schmidt? I think it was the perfect way to sum that up. But it was a really funny decision. It was a shocking right angle bounce, and I think Kelly was just looking to launch it down the ground and hope that I don't know who was running onto it, but that the Geelong players would outrun whoever was mopping it up for Hawthorn and try and make a contest out of it, and hopefully find the boundary line, make it a 50-50 ball, and it deviated towards the boundary, and it was really unlucky.
And the interchange infringement, could you bring me over that? I was flicking back and forth between the two games because they were both really close.
Well, I think it was after a goal, and there were a few Geelong players interchanging, as every team does, and Tom Lonergan looked to run off the ground, and he turned back around. I think he saw 3 on the bench, and he turned back around to the ground. And the interchange stewards must have made a counting error, and they said no, there's 19 players on the ground when there were still 3 on the bench. So, the AFL looked at that after the game and realised, okay, that's made a mistake, and thankfully it wasn't game changing in the end.
Definitely, but at least they identified their mistake. They're not burying their heads in the sand. And it was another game where Hawkeye was used, not used for any decision, but trial, yeah. And there'll be one more today, I believe. I think it's Melbourne-Sydney.
Well, it's all games at the MCG.
All games at the MCG, yeah. So, do you think we'll see that in finals, maybe, if it's deemed a success? Or
if it's deemed a success, I don't see why not. If it's going to benefit the competition, you may as well start using it and get it in as quickly as you can.
Yeah. If we've already got the video review system, why not make it better? It's just I don't see any problem with implementing it. So we'll move on to the next game. Matt, your mob, the Tigers, got absolutely steamrolled yesterday by North, and I think a lot of North supporters were thinking, here comes another choke, but wasn't to be. North got over the top.
Never came, really. From really, it was just that burst at the start of the second quarter of about 8 goals, I believe, or 7 or 8 goals.
Well, it was 8 goals to 0 that quarter.
Yeah, it was hard to watch. And the number of scoring shots were relatively similar up until, I'd say, about three-quarter time. Richmond at one point with 3 and 14, which is absolutely ridiculous. And North Melbourne were kicking it from everywhere, which is... Aaron Black's goal was amazing to watch. It probably will get goal of the round. But... yeah, it was just a really bad day. North Melbourne were playing exceptionally, and Hardwick, I believe, was too slow in his reactions to change things, similar to the Collingwood game.
I think the goal kicking you could probably put down to Brad Scott, on his own. Richmond were taking a lot of shots from near the boundary line. They were playing wide, and they were forced wide by North, who were you know, they were very good defensively. I thought, you know, Lockie Hansen was probably close to, if not best on ground, mopping things up down back. He took 15 marks, most of them intercept marks. And, yeah, you know, Scott Thompson pretty much dominated Jack Rewalt. And, you know, when North won the footy, which was very often inside 50, they just looked up to their goals and thought, okay, we're going to go straight there. We're not going to mess about. We're going to go straight down the corridor. And it worked. And, you know, they ran in waves in that second quarter and looked fantastic and kicked straight as a result.
The thing that really was the difference between the two sides was, one, the hard running, and two, the difference in congestion in the two forward lines. Richmond often had cases where Rewalt, Vickery and Edwards all flew at the same ball and there was nobody to crumb, and it was consistently happening, and North Melbourne would just, you know, stream forward, players would spread out and someone would get hit up, and often in the corridor for an easy shot at goal.
I think it was smart thinking by Scott, leaving Lockie Hansen back. I think he knew that the three target forwards are probably not nimble enough if the ball goes to ground and they're not going to stop him. So I think it was a smart decision having the tall player in Hansen as the sweeper, and when the Richmond forwards weren't playing, I guess, intelligently together.
And the one thing that impresses me most about North is their talent up forward, the tall forwards. They've got Tarrant, Black and the old Hidden Petrie, and they all combined for 8 goals, and that's what I think is their most potent aspect of their side.
Well, it's very hard to match up on 3 tall forwards when they're all firing, isn't it?
Yeah, and we had Batchelor playing on, I'd say, the third forward. When he isn't a third tall, he's more of a fourth rebounding player. But if we had Dylan Grimes, that would be, you know, a bit different, but still, having 8 goals between your 3 key forwards is always great. At least it wasn't 7 from Petrie again, which was a nice change. But just going back to the goal kicking really briefly, where you said, you know, we were driven wide. It did happen, but, you know, you have players like Jack Rewalt kicking it out on the full, Brett Delidio hitting the post twice, Dustin Martin missing, which he doesn't do. Vickery is actually quite a good shot at goal, same with Jake King, and they both didn't kick a goal. It was just a bad performance. Well, as a mediocre performance from Richmond, but a superb performance from North Melbourne, in my opinion.
One guy from North who stepped up, he's been in and out of the side, probably a bit on the outer this year, Levi Greenwood. He came in yesterday, played as a tagger on Delidio, kept Delidio to 16 touches and then 26 himself. Was pretty impressive for him. Should cement his spot for the next couple of rounds at least.
Well, I suppose it's one thing North don't have is that, you know, defensive midfielder they can really rely on. You know, they have Cunnington, Zeeble, Swallow. They're very good, you know, stoppage players, but they're not, you know, players who can actually lay a tag really effectively and, you know, stop a midfielder who's in form. And Greenwood's one of those players who can do that, and he's been lingering in the VFL a lot, and he's come back to the side and he's relished the opportunity. He's been fantastic.
They've tried Sean Atley in that role, but I really think it doesn't suit his game. He's much more, you know, suited to rebounding off half-back, and they've definitely, you know, utilised him more in that role, especially with Greenwood being, you know, chucked into the guts. That definitely helps and allows the team to play more of their natural style of game, which is always good for confidence and just general, you know, morale, I suppose. Yeah,
well, it was a very, very composed performance from North, I suppose. You know, the way they did handle themselves down back was fantastic. I think they had the second biggest differential between inside 50s rebounded, you know, behind GWS Adelaide, which was, you know, 135 points. I think that shows how potent they were up forward and how effective they were down back. So, you know, it was a very fantastic performance from North. You know, I think they're 9th on the ladder, probably 10th in the West Coast one last night. So, yeah. You know, they're still in the hunt for finals, realistically, even after the losses they've had. So, you know, if things swing their way, I know they've got a tough run home, but, you know, if they keep playing footy like this, they had a good second half of the year last year, you know, there's every chance they could slip into 8th or, you know, whatever happens with Essendon, they could finish 9th and make the finals, so you never know what could happen.
And see, that's the thing, there's quite a number of teams that are still competing for finals, and one of them that's been really impressive is West Coast, which got over the top of Adelaide. Adelaide are probably gone now. I thought they were gone a few weeks ago, but they're probably well and truly gone now. But West Coast are...
If they're going to concede 3 goals in the last 5 minutes the way they did, you know, they are not a finals team.
Did they kick a point in that time at all, or just do nothing?
I don't think so, no.
Yeah, I think even a point would have been good for them, but wasn't to be. Choke again. West Coast, I wouldn't say based on the full game that they're looking like a finals team, but I think they're certainly capable of challenging teams if they do end up making the finals.
Just on Adelaide, I think not only a decline in the whole team's form, in personal form, Sam Jacobs has been absolutely shocking this year. I mean, I think last night it should have been a battle of the rucks. There's plenty of good ruckmen in both those sides, and it wasn't really influential. But I think we've talked a lot about how losing Tippett would affect Adelaide's forward line, but clearly it's affected Jacobs' form as well, because he's having to play with McKernan and Jenkins, who they go through Jenkins playing more as a forward and McKernan as a second ruck. I think he's been really affected by Tippett going out.
It's lucky McKernan will be gone for pretty much the rest of his career after that elbow to who was it? I think it was Brad Shepherd. He copped an elbow straight in the side of the head, which was absolutely... It's one of those stupidest things I've seen in a football field, and he'll get very many weeks for that. So I think it's probably a little bit harsh on Sam Jacobs. He was probably one of, if not the best individual rucks last year. I mean, Nick Naitanui was good, and Sam Jacobs was probably at the same level, but I think he competed well against two rucks. I mean, they both had the same amount of hit-outs to advantage. They both had 10 each, so... he hasn't been consistent. He's had his down games and he's had his games where he's had 50 hit-outs and he's dominated, but he just hasn't been as reliable.
And Nick Nat didn't even have that great of a game. It was really Dean Cox that shouldered the majority of the ruck load. Just going back to that Brad Shepherd injury, I think it's similar to Dean Solomon basically king-hitting Cameron Ling.
That was the first thing I thought of, and Solomon got 7 or 8 weeks.
7 weeks, yeah.
Because he broke Ling's cheekbone.
Yeah, and he had to get a metal plate in his face, which is always fun,
Oh yeah, so fun having
metal in your face. Or at least if he gets hit again, it doesn't hurt as much.
Yeah, the other guy gets a broken elbow. He's like, try it again. But I thought one guy who racked up quite a bit, and it must be a career high, is Chris Maston. 39 touches. I can't remember him getting up there before.
He had 38 or 39 against Melbourne early in the year as well.
Josh Kennedy kicking 4 goals again. It's really becoming a consistent thing with him kicking 3 or 4 goals every week.
Brad Dalziel, I remember in his debut season for Brisbane, he was absolutely racking up the ball. Last night he got 26 touches, but I think he's finally, he might not be that list clogger that he used to be. I think both he Maston and Prittis, I guess none of them are really quality ball users, but if you're going to get it that much, like between the three of them, surely that's going to do a bit of damage.
He has improved his ball use a little bit. Like before, it was shocking when he wasn't getting a go in the team, but arguably he was one of the best on ground last night, Brad Dalziel, and he kicked a really important goal in that last 5 minutes.
Well, he was one of those players that he found heaps of the ball at Brisbane, but he wasn't a very good kick. He wasn't very reliable with his disposal, and as such, he was forced out of the side. And he's reinventing himself a little bit at West Coast. He is pushing forward. He kicked that goal. He had another goal assist, and he's starting to really find himself as a player. And if he becomes one of those rotation midfielders at West Coast, how deep their midfield bats. So it's going to become a very important part of West Coast.
He kind of reminds me of Prittis when he first started at West Coast. He's never been reliable with his disposal, but he's improved it over time. But another guy for Adelaide I thought was quite good was the young Brad Crouch. He racked up 26 posies and was pretty impressive.
Just going off the votes here in the Age, it's really weird. They've got one West Coast player in the top 5 players, and that was Chris Maston, and the others are... Sorry?
That was Chris Maston.
Yeah. And they've got Rory Sloane, Ricky Henderson, Patrick Dangerfield and Brad Crouch getting the other top 4 votes.
Well, I would have thought there were 4 crows there that Scott Thompson would have deserved one. He was very good, contested ball work as he normally is. So.
It's very uncommon for the winning team to only have one player in the top 5, though. But I suppose it was more an indictment on maybe the bottom 5 for each team, and maybe West Coast was just that much better.
Well, as we know, they got a deep midfield and they got a lot of goal kickers. Kennedy kicked 4. I don't know how many Lacroix kicked, but I think he kicked a couple. Did he?
Yeah, he kicked one on the 3/4 time siren, I believe in that.
And that was an important goal. Just steady things a little for West Coast. And I thought Embley was a little bit harsh. He had 12 touches in the last quarter, and his run down the wing, I think it was probably his best game for a long time. And Prittis in that last quarter was fantastic. So that's probably a bit harsh.
So Brad Crouch, as we were going back to him, I think he got the Rising Star nomination last week. I think if O'Meara drops off a little bit and Brad Crouch can play another few really strong games, is he a chance to challenge O'Meara for the Rising Star, or has O'Meara already got it in the bag?
As much as GWS are a chance to win 5 games for the remainder of the season, I think.
I'm trying to think who else there even is that would be a decent challenge.
Ollie Wines, who's dropped off.
Wines.
Floston was pretty good.
He's played
dropped
three
off.
good games, I'd say. But
Mitchell's dropped off as well, Tom Mitchell. So.
And he's only played 4 games, I think, as well. So
Wingard's not eligible anymore as he's played too many, But he'll probably get the best under-21 award from the AFL Coaches Association.
By a mile.
Yeah. But, that should be about it for the big games from yesterday. Just going to go to some SYN messages, and then we'll be back with a few of the other games from the weekend.
You're listening to SYN Radio.
Not listening to Objection is criminal.
Does the brain generate as much power as either a 10 watt or a 20 watt light bulb?
10 watt or 20 watt? Let's go 20 watt.
Sorry,
No,
it's 10
damn it.
watt.
It's 10 watt. Damn it. How did they measure that? Was it like luminosity or something?
I'm not sure. I just humanbody.net tells me these things, so I'll check the fact. I'm not a scientist, I have other things that I do.
Objection. 5 to 6 weekdays.
8 a.m. weekends.
SYN's Australian feature album of the week, Kieran J. Callum, Embracism.
You know me, fire, you know me, fire.
Kieran J. Callahan's debut is provocative and abrasive in nature. The album touches on themes of masculinity, sexuality, and beauty.
2 boys rolling around in the dust,
Listen to the Australian feature album, Kieran J. Callum, Embracism, all this week on SYN.
And when a boy grows up, he's still the same, but he's a man.
Download Asia. System requirements. Good memory. To remember that we're on Saturday nights
From 7 p.m.
on SYN 90.7 FM.
Saturday night from 7 p.m.
Download Asia. Download Asia.
You're back on Bound for Glory on SYN. We've got a message in, only one in at the moment, from Ash, who's on our show, and she's been a bit of a smarty pants here. Happy birthday to our rising star expert, Pete. Give him a follow on Twitter, as everyone needs to do, as you're always pleading for people to do, Pete. And I don't know if we should read this last bit here, but apparently I suck.
You do suck.
Yeah, well, you know what? You suck. And something else that sucked was Carlton on Friday night. Bloody hopeless.
That was the best segue ever.
No, it was a dominant performance, really, from Collingwood ever since the 3-goal curse from Carlton to begin the game. A really decent spread of performers. Dane Swan and Scott Pendlebury, the stars again.
Well, of course, back on the texting, make sure you do text us in on 0427 767 767 or online at syn.org.au. We'll be sure to read them out. But it was a funny story from Carlton. A lot of the year there's been, half a quarter or a quarter where they haven't really, played at all, and the opposition's capitalised. They kicked 5 or 6 goals in the quarter, and on Friday night it was the exact opposite. They showed up for half a quarter, and then the rest is history. Collingwood ran away with it. Their pressuring midfield was back. They were tackling hard. They still won the tackle count despite having the ball for the majority of the game, which was, that's something you don't often see. And I thought Pendlebury was fantastic. He copped a knock early and played on, was probably best on ground. And Swan, whenever he gets 40, he's very hard to stop. So it was a very good game from Collingwood.
And I think watching the game that the most telling time was in the last couple of minutes in that first quarter, because Carlton had absolutely dominated, thrown everything at Collingwood, shown how much of a good side they were. They went up by 28 points. And I know a lot of fans were thinking, just kick one more goal, try and get it back within 4, like under 4 goals. And then they suddenly kicked 3 goals in that last 2 minutes, and it was 9 points. So Collingwood had played one of their worst quarters for the year, which is saying something. And they were only 9 points down at the break. Which really, I think, going in, both coaches would have been unhappy, but Collingwood at least had the momentum. So
you say some supporters, you mean you, right?
Oh, everyone.
Top 8 problems.
And it could have been even uglier. Collingwood had 33 scoring shots to Carlton's 17, so pretty lucky in that respect. And just looking at the stats, we were beaten all over the ground apart from disposal efficiency, surprisingly enough, 72% to 68, and frees 4. We got one more free. Yay!
Collingwood's kicking efficiency was 58. I don't know how they won the game off that.
Kane Lucas probably just giving them the ball every time he could.
Hang on, just on Kane Lucas, I think he's been a massive whipping boy this year. I think Friday night, he probably borrowed Dyson Heppel's Spaceman helmets, and he got 33 possessions. I think he's actually stepped up this year. I know he gets a lot of the ball and butchers it, but I think still, if you can get 33 possessions and no one else is doing much, it's still okay.
Well, I think what he's got to learn to do is back himself. You know, he does get a lot of the ball. You know, especially in the last few weeks, he's really started to find. You know, he's starting to get 25 disposals a game, and you know, I think he. You know, he does get a bit nervous, you know, he does get a little bit jittery, you know, we've seen some of his shots on goal, you know, running into easy goals that he's missed, and, you know, some of his disposal that's been a little bit off, and, you know, whether he's frightened or not by big stages or something like that, I don't know, but, you know, I think he's just got to let his footy do the talking, he's got to back himself with his disposal, and, you know, he's a top draft pick, he's a good player, he's an accumulator, and, you know, if he keeps finding it 25 times a game, you know, he's going to be a very good player for Carlton.
I didn't even notice him, to be honest. I was quite surprised he got 33.
No, I think Lucas was a lot better than some others. Like, if you want to point the finger, I'd be starting with the small forwards, who Garlett started off in a blaze of fire and then must have gone on holiday after quarter time because he wasn't sighted. Betts kicked that one goal from point blank with Heath Shaw's mark, and Yaron suddenly appeared at three-quarter time, but apart from that...
Yeah, Gala kicked the first 2 goals of the game and the world was upside down for a second.
And that by quarter time, I think he had 3 of his 7 disposals. Yeah. And, after that, three possessions, 2 goals at quarter time, and then after that, had another 4 for the whole game. So
Bit of nothing. And how about the wafer-thin physique of Jarrett Wade?
Yes, I was just about to say, when he went down, we just went down with him as well. Kind of like the Titanic. It was just, it was bad to watch.
Great move by Buckley to move Ben Reid forward, kicking 4 goals straight on the night.
I think that really changed the game, because I think one thing Collingwood haven't had this year is, you know, that second tall forward, because Lynch has been shockingly out of form, and, you know, now he's out of the side. And I think, you know, when players like Swan and Pendlebury and Beams will come back next week, you know, when they look up and they see not just Cloak, but, you know, someone like Ben Reid who can clunk a big mark, when they look up and see those 2 players, you know, I think there's a lot more options for them. You know, they're a bit more confident with their disposal. You know, they've got good options to choose from.
And as hard as Lynch does try, he's no Chris Dawes, so he's got big shoes to fill.
To be fair, though, when he was good in 2010, Collingwood did look very good with him as well.
Reid started out as a forward, and I think he was pretty maligned for his kicking a goal. He's always able to take a mark, just like Travis Cloak. I think both of them were great on Friday night. They both improved their kicking efficiency. A goal, I think Cloak had 5-1. Reid, I think 4 straight potentially. So I think, it's on a quiet level. That's great, because I think Cloak was probably one of the worst shots at goal.
And that's the funny thing. The reason Reid, as you said, got shifted back was because he just couldn't kick for goal. He was one of the worst kicks for goal you've ever seen in your life. And he's come back, had 2 games forward. One earlier in the year where he kicked 3 straight. Now he's kicked 4 straight, and he's levelled Sam Reid. So he's levelled his brother at the moment, which became a bit of a cheering point on Friday night, trying to get him up there. But no, he's really impressive. And of course, because like they had Henderson and Jameson as their main key backs, you had Witts down there as well. At points, Cade Simpson was on Ben Reid, which was laughable because they just put it right on his head, and you could see Simpson trying to punch it, but he's 10 centimetres shorter.
And,
so.
you know, they took 8 marks inside 50 combined, but I think, you know, it gives a lot of confidence to the rest of the forward line. You know, they had 18 marks inside 50 to Carlton's 6. You know, really dominated up forward, exposed their back line a bit, and, you know, it leaves them a bit more confident, I think, Collingwood as a whole, having 2 good forward options up there, you know, that are kicking goals. And I think, you know, if it's sustainable, if Reid carries that for the rest of the season, we know Cloak will. If Reid does, you know, Collingwood are going to be dangerous.
Question for everyone: should Mark Murphy have played?
He didn't look comfortable.
No, he looked out of sorts, and he was kind of double guessing himself, running into contests and stuff as well. I think he's not strong enough yet.
But you know, I think that game was always going to come where, you know, just where he's going to test the waters. He's going to see, you know, how fit he is. And
do you want to do that against Collingwood on a Friday night?
Probably not. Or who do Carlton play next week?
St Kilda.
St Kilda.
And St Kilda is quietly confident about that one.
So they should be good record.
They did win last time, but I think, you know, they probably would have been a better game to come back against, because we know St Kilda probably aren't as contested a side, and, you know, winning his own ball probably is going to be a bit easier. So I think, you know, that would have been a bit more ideal, because he didn't look himself.
And one guy I just want to, I think, give more credit than what stats show is Marley Williams. 14 disposals, but he was just brilliant, one of the best, I think.
One of the, we're talking about Mark Murphy not playing. He probably shouldn't have. I think Nick Graham from the reserves at the moment, he should have came in. He's real hard-working, racks up the ball. He's averaging close to 6 tackles a game and nearly 8 handball receives in the past couple of games in the VFL. So he's inside and out, and he's absolute gem. So I think he should get the nod very soon.
I think he'll get one next week after a few of the performances. Just listening on the radio, I was driving at the time during the second half, I believe, but Chris Yarran, they consistently mentioned him kick the ball and then just stop and not run forward, just walk after he had his disposal, and that certainly is worrying that he's not willing to put in the effort to do the link-up play. And Malthouse is the type that does mentor players. He really gives. He basically had a fresh slate, I would assume, at the start of the year, that everyone has a chance to get a game. And, some of these players clearly haven't taken that on board.
I think excluding Mark Murphy, who, considering it was his comeback game, I think really only Chris Judd and Kane Lucas can probably hold their heads up.
McLean's another one. I thought he was one of the better ones.
And McLean was good, but he dropped off a bit in the second half. And I think Matty Cruz was well fought hard in the ruck. But
he's not intense enough for mine, Cruiser. He lacked a bit of intensity, and Ben Hudson really showed what it takes to monster the ruck contests. Cruiser, he performed admirably, but I don't know, he lacks the mongrel, in my opinion. Like he's a fair player, but sometimes you have to be a bit less than a fair player if you're playing in the ruck, and it really sets the tone for the rest of the side.
Still, he pushed forward and he took a few contested marks and he kicked a couple of goals, had a couple of goal assists. So he did well. I thought, he did perform admirably, but I think there really weren't very many Carlton players who can hold their heads up high and say, I'm proud of that performance. That was a good game from me. So I think we better move on to Giants Bulldogs. We had yesterday, Arvo. It was a funny choice televising this one. I thought, when you got North Richmond on the other channel, but nonetheless, it turned out to be a close game. I thought, I was wavering on the tip personally. I was going back and forth from Giants Dogs, pretty much just before the final bounce, and Giants came out firing. They didn't have that much of the ball, but they ran hard and they took their opportunities. They kicked it long and they backed themselves, which is what they've done a lot this year. And they play confidently. I think that's it's a very good sign. And they got rewarded against. Well, we know the Dogs aren't a very good team, so and it almost paid off. It was almost their first win of the year, and I think they'll be very happy with that performance, even though they didn't win in the end.
A bit unfortunate. Wait, if Essendon do get all their points stripped, will they be second last if GWS don't win a game just based on percentage? Yeah. Or do their percentage go as well?
I think you have to factor that in, but
that would be embarrassing for GWS. Just saying.
Well, I was cheering for. As you know, I'm not going to mention it, but there's a reason why I was cheering for GWS. You know what it is?
I know what it is.
So I need Essendon to finish last, and I was kind of cheering for GWS to win because, they won't finish last because of the percentage.
GWS still have a few weaker teams to come. They should get a win. So
they have to play Melbourne, I think.
Yeah.
Is it up there, I think?
Yeah, it is. So I'd back them in that game.
And speaking of up, it was in Canberra, but it only got just a bit over 7,000 to the game, which I thought was quite unfortunate. I thought they would get at least 10,000. I suppose it's a bit of a bottom of the ladder clash, but is it worrying that they're only getting 7,000 to games?
Well, Star Trek's capacity is only about 8,000-9,000, I think, probably under 10, something like that. And they don't play very many games at Skoda Stadium, which is where they're established and where they should be pulling crowds. I mean, they haven't been, but that's where they got to play their games. And if they're playing games, ANZ.
What a horrible stadium.
and Markey, they're not playing at Skoda. I think, that really doesn't help them because they didn't really have a home ground advantage at all.
The Dogs have played there a few times, so it's
Taylor Adams, I reckon he's probably going to get rubbed out. He was just, I'm not sure what made him do it, but he started to fight. He hit Adam Cooney over the back of the head just out of nowhere, and it looked like Cooney took a bit of a dive, but it was a strong enough contact. I think he'll probably get rubbed out for that. A couple of other things I want to touch on. Devon Smith and Steve Canelio, very impressive. And, Michael Talia, he looked great. I think it was his second 30-plus possession game for a key defender. That's fantastic.
He's got the rising star nomination locked in this week. I don't think anyone else should bother. He was fantastic off half-back, intercepting the ball. And, he's a very composed player, a lot like his older brother Daniel, who we know won it last year. And, he was very good. Another incident we probably should note is the Cameron Johannesson hit. I think the first thing I thought of when I saw it was, this is Luke Hodge, Mark Murphy all over again, and we know Murphy, broke his cheekbone, and Johannesson, as a result, has been ruled out for the rest of the year. He's done his AC joint, so which is a shame because he's been a good player as well. And I think Cameron will get off. Because I think he was attacking the ball. I think that'll be his defence if the match review panel set the precedent there and with the Luke Hodge hit. So I think he'll get off, but we never know with the match review panel. He could get 10 weeks.
Put on a blindfold, throw a dart at a dartboard.
Well, he's a huge man, and he got down very late. He didn't get high contact at all. I think he got his shoulder, and his intent was on the ball, wasn't late. So I think he should get off. Also, another interesting thing, the AFL. I'm not too sure what happened with their clock system, but they had to do it manually. So Channel 7 was displaying a count up clock instead of a count down. I know they do it at the games. What do we think of the count up clock? Does it add to the intensity, or especially in a close game like that? It was pretty good.
Well, having no clue how much time was left, I think in the last 5 minutes, especially when Greater Western Sydney kicked that last goal, I thought that really added to the hype because I don't think many teams knew what was going on. So it was, I think I like it. So
it's a bit of a throwback to the 5-minute warning that Channel 10 used to do, and I used to break out my stopwatch and time it myself so I would know exactly what was going to happen, and it worked. But I thought it was quite interesting. It certainly. Do you think the coaches would still know how much time is left? Or
they probably have some way of figuring it out. I think we should note as well, Dylan Shield was very good. He had 25 disposals, kicked 3 goals. I thought Clay Smith was good. Dale House was good for the Dogs. So it was a promising performance, but there's pros and cons you can take out of the game for both sides. I think more so the Dogs than the Giants.
And Talia had 32 disposals as well, so that's definitely got to be a game high, like a season career high.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
so.
And the other game so far, the Q clash with the Lions and the Gold Coast Lions coming up again. That's their 5th win, I believe. Gold Coast taking out the first one, but. No Gary Ablett, which certainly hurt the Suns. I know last year they tended to win or just perform better with Ablett out of the side, probably just due to over-reliance on him. But I think this year they've matured enough as a side that with Gary Ablett there, I think they would have given it a good shake. Although Jared Brennan did come in for him and did a quite admirable job. Kicked
3 goals.
3 goals, yeah. And it was very un-Satanta-like with his celebrations. He was just,
subdued,
a bit subdued. You're like, just kicked it from 55 off 2 steps.
Don't celebrate goals against your former side. I think. I think one of the things they lacked with that Gary Ablett is they're a bit uncomposed, a little bit jittery in the forward half. Their disposal wasn't very clean, and I think Brisbane, they were much better than Gold Coast were in the forward half. They were very good disposal. I think Pierce Hanley was one of those players who was very good. Running forward, and Adcock through the centre I think was good as well, and especially hitting targets like Brown, Stake and Merrick, they combined for 8 goals as well, and I think it's as good a defender as Rory Thompson is, there's not 3 of them there, so a very tall forward line will stretch the Gold Coast defence, so it was a good performance from Brisbane, one that they probably should look to build on for the rest of the season.
I was very impressed with Staker's contested marking. It's something that's with no, if Jonathan Brown isn't hit up, it used to be, just immediately rebounded out of the Brisbane forward 50. But now with him, playing some decent football there, it really gives them another good target up forward. And Zorka was kicking goals again, out of nothing, which he tends to do. He loves having the old snap around the corner. And Sam Mays as well was another that really impressed me. He always seemed to be, getting the ball at the back of the contest and thumping it forward. He knows where to run, which is a trait that a few Brisbane players really have. Pierce Hanley being another one, and even Daniel Rich worked his way into the game later. He had a very quiet first half, but he certainly was able to impact the contest, and Matty Leuenberger started with an absolute house on fire, was dominant in the ruck, although Tom Nicholas did do alright. Leuenberger was the dominant big man on the ground.
Where does he sit amongst rucks in the competition? I know there's Cox, I know there's Nat-Nui, I know there's Jacobs, and there's a raft of other players, but Leuenberger's form recently, especially coming back from his Achilles injury, which saw him out last year pretty much, and he's come back. He's been absolutely fantastic for Brisbane. Where does he sit?
I'd say absolutely top 5. I think he's had a lot better year than Jacobs or Ivan Maric. So I think if he's not top 5 behind the two West Coast ruckmen, I honestly can't think of anyone that's clearly better than him besides the two West Coast ruckmen.
Goldstein, I was going to...
Yeah, I guess so, but I think Leuenberger's probably got more versatility. I think Goldstein better tap ruckman.
And someone who's been better than Jacobs, in my opinion, is Mike Pike. He never gets talked about. I know he used to be, quite unconventional, but this year he's been really good, so he's someone who I would think would be on the border of that, and on form, he's ahead of Jacobs. So.
It's amazing how he's shot up. But
McAvoy's been alright as well, but... Yeah, there's not many great rucks this year. There hasn't been a standout. Cox probably is the standout for mine. Natanui's been hot and cold, I think.
There's Will Minson as well.
Well,
yeah,
Big
probably.
Willie.
Potentially AA, just for him.
Yeah, he's just having about 1,000 hit outs a game.
Yeah.
Most of them to Ryan.
Sorry, Will.
Yeah, we're sorry. It's going to be a very good test for Brisbane. I think, replicating that performance, they got a good run over the next month. They've got I think they got North, they got the D's, Port, and then the Saints. That's their next 4, and all of them are winnable. I think if they play their best footy, they play like they did against the Suns, who we know are a good side, and the Suns have a tough draw as well. So I think Brisbane can pinch a few wins over the next month, and I suppose redeem a little bit of what they haven't built on this season. Because we know they've been disappointing. They won the NAD Cup and they've dropped right off since. And I think they got a bit to work with. I think most of the midfielders stood up yesterday, and if they replicate that performance, they'll be in good stead for 2014. Yep. And on that, I think we should go to some SIM messages. Remember to text us in on 0427 767 767.
SIN's international feature album of the week, Smith Weston's Soft Will.
A blossoming follow-up to 2011's Diet Blonde, the Chicago Three-Piece return with a summery beach vibe on Soft Will.
Listen to the international feature album, Smith Weston's Soft Will, all this week on SIN.
Y'all ready for this?
Everyone knows Sin Talk's music, but who knew Sin Talk Sport? Sin is full of exciting and fresh sports content, including the Sports Desk, a daily half-hourly sports chat show. You can hear the latest sports news and reviews every day from 9 a.m, only on Sin.
The Melbourne International Film Festival presents the Next Gen program, a collection of diverse, innovative and high-quality films that will appeal to people of all ages. Encouraging young people to become active viewers who question and challenge the moving image is essential in a media-saturated era. Through drama, documentary and animation, the Next Gen program explores issues such as family, prejudice, injustice, violence, rebellion, identity and overcoming hardship with integrity and depth. Go to myf.com.au/nextgen. MIF sponsoring SIN.
And you're back on Bound for Glory. We're going to have a bit of a different segment today. We're going to chat about the Under-18s and the championships, which concluded last Wednesday. It's been a great series. Vic Metro and South Australia were the two top teams. It's not surprising that South Australia eventually got the job done. It was 3 points over at Skilled Stadium that got them up against Vic Metro, and it was obviously the huge loss of Tom Boyd, who injured himself against WA, kicked 3 goals in 4 minutes and then injured himself, so that was his champs done and dusted. And it really showed against Vic Metro, because on the day Vic Metro really lacked that forward target. Max Hayes is quite good, but he's just not a number one forward at the moment. Doesn't have the strength that Boyd does. He's probably got maybe a little bit more athleticism, but he just doesn't have that number one capability, and the WA boys really sort of held him back and did their job. And of course South Australia almost sort of choked against WA in the last game, but they managed to get the job done. And they've got a raft of key midfielders who are just Aish, Dunstan, Demont, Scharenberg, who plays halfback as well, and Dwayne Wilson. Not many people talk about him, but he's another quality ball user. So
there's a few guys from Division 2 that I'll talk about, from Tasmania specifically. I think I'm going to be having a chat to Matthew Armstrong, the high performance manager from AFL Tasmania, about their top draft picks potentially. I think the brothers
Caden Jake Koljashny. It looks a lot more confusing to say, but it's really not. There's a couple of silent letters, but it's Koljashny. So Cade is probably going to be the highest pick at this stage. He racks up the ball, across half-back, through the midfield or up forward. He's almost like a Scharenberg, so if you miss out on Scharenberg, you've got him as a backup.
Eli Templeton, he was very impressive. I think when we saw him at Vizzy Park, he was probably Tassie's best player on the day. So
yeah, he's very noticeable. He's got the old Dale Thomas, Dyson Heppel kind of hair.
And he's a bit slight. That's the only real knock on him, right?
There's a lot of midfielders that are like that in this draft, unless you're Matt Crouch or someone like that. There's a lot of sort of smaller bodied midfielders that probably won't get a lot of game time next year, but yeah, he's quite sort of quick and can evade contests and all that kind of thing, so he's a prospect to look out for around the middle of the draft, I think.
Let's you've prepared a top 10 for us. I think it'd be pretty interesting to have a look at, and we'll discuss that.
Yeah, and it's actually one of the best drafts in years, because right now I've seen up to 5 players that could go number 1, and that's fantastic, like really. Of course, GWS have offered up their number 1 pick, so this could literally completely change depending on who gets the number 1 pick. GWS, as it stands, if they held on to it, I think they would still go for a midfielder in Aish. He's been injured this year, so you haven't really been able to compare him to the others, because he's had his shoulder problems. He's come back in. He's just averaging sort of in the teens in terms of disposals, but he's class. He had the highest disposal efficiency at the champs. He's just brilliant. I think there's a huge emphasis on ball users in like modern football as well as athletes. So Aish I had at 1. Another guy who could go 1, I've got at 2 to Melbourne, is Kelly. He's probably the next best ball user. Great elite ball user, gets it inside. He's fantastic. He wins his own footy as well as on the outside, so that's pretty straightforward. 3, I had Boyd. I think there's no real surprise there. Again, depends who gets the number 1 pick, or if GWS or Melbourne decide to go for Boyd. There's that option. I don't think GWS will at the moment. But he'll be a much-needed thing, a player for Bulldogs, because obviously he's a key forward and they need anyone who can mark inside 50. St Kilda with pick 4, although they may now get Boyd because Bulldogs decide to go and win. Good on you. I've got Sheed. They're really, I have a feeling he'll be one that they're really keen on, because he plays through the midfield. He's got that sort of run and carry. He's not a burst player, but he gets a lot of the ball. He kicks goals. He sort of has that real big impact. And, I mean, with number 5, Scharenberg, with Gold Coast, I think he's another one that could potentially go at number 1. So he's another 190-centimetre player, kind of like a Goddard, runs across half-back and midfield, and things like that. So they're probably the top 5. They're the ones that, can really impact a game and could go number 1, depending on the team that has it. The 5 after that, I had sort of Ben Lennon, Christian Salem, Luke McDonald's obviously going to go to North, Jack Billings and Luke Dunstan.
I just on GWS offering up pick 1, I think Carlton's very interested in that. I think obviously they want to take Tom Boyd. I think I've heard a couple of things that they could be worthy. I think Chris Yarran in their first pick.
Yes.
Or Matthew Watson. Matthew Watson, Jeremy Laidler in their first pick. So I think both.
That would not do it.
I've heard Cruiser as well as an option to go over there. And Brisbane are actually another team that's making a play for that number 1 pick, because they've got a lot of academy players this year that they're going to be picking up in the draft. So they don't really have to worry about will my player be there at the point that I want him. They can just bid and get them as soon as they want.
Well, I think Brisbane's a good one because you've got players like Maguire and Pat Full and Merritt who can play down back, and I think that's what they lack at the moment. They've got Gillum and Moore and all Davis is. I think Davis came back yesterday, and it's not very strong. So I think that's probably going to be their prime target, as well as probably contested mids as well. And I think probably Carlton don't have that many to offer up as well. So
do you think
interesting?
Do you think if GWS get Franklin, they could move one of their more forward players down back and
well, I think if they have Franklin, Boyd, Patton, and Cameron all playing the same side, I think Cameron would go to centre half back personally.
And they got the other guy,
Tomlinson. He'd go back.
And Jax is his name, or Jake?
Jack. Yeah.
I think he was forward defender, so they can throw him down back
as well. And Matthew Bunting. They got plenty. So
and Bunting's one that's really. He hasn't been getting that many games this year. He might be looking for a move back to Victoria at the end of the year.
He hasn't been very good in the games he's played.
I suppose so. But it's really the only role that they don't like a key back, but they don't have many rebounding defenders either, which is really Bunting's main thing. One thing I want to ask, I've seen on the AFL.com.au draft watch, they always seem to list Dom Sheed as like number 15, which I think is really...
No, he'll be top 10, absolutely.
Yeah, closer to top 5 even.
Yeah, he'd be one that would push for top 2, so...
Because, will his broken collarbone influence anything?
Oh, he was brilliant. He won the player of the series, only playing 2 games. Yeah. So, I mean, that tells you what
There's always
kind of
one player that slides, though, that really shouldn't.
I think that player, I've got, came up with my sort of phantom draft. I've got James Cheetahs as one that might slide, because he's someone who uses the ball well. He hasn't picked up as much as he would have liked in the champs, but he's still such a quality player. I've got him sliding. And one guy I've got really shooting up the order is Mitch Honeychurch, because he's been brilliant at the champs.
I love his name.
Exactly, and BT will have a field day out there with him.
No.
So I've really got him sliding up.
Don't make me think of it.
Yeah.
I just want to see like the headline, "The Church of Honey" or something like that.
No, he's getting out of a sticky situation. We can guarantee that one coming
the
up.
Gospel according to Honeychurch.
And just on that, we're going to go to some SYN messages. After that, we'll preview all today's games.
SYN's International Feature Album of the Week, Myron and E, Broadway.
We can go as far as you would like to go.
San Francisco duo Myron and E throw back to classic soul to create modern funk and soul tunes.
Hey honey, where you been? Was you out there running around?
Broadway is their debut release under the label Stone's Throw.
Listen to the international feature album Myron and E, Broadway, all this week on SYN.
Call Rosadactyl.
Calling Rosadactyl Mobile.
Yo, Rose, where you at?
Yo, Till, I'm over here. I'm in.
Let the beat drop.
From 9 to 10 a.m. Tuesdays, 90.7 SYN Radio.
You're on Bound for Glory on SYN. Text us in on 0427 767 767 and talk all things footy. 3 games today. What have we got first?
Melbourne, Sydney.
Oh, that'll be a close one.
Yeah, I like that one. At least it's in Melbourne. So at least the home fans can travel to see them get belted.
They might get a 15,000 if they're lucky.
That's generous.
No, I don't know. They'll put up much more of a fight than they would have a month ago, at least. Jack White's had a really good game last week, I thought. Hopefully we can see him, impose himself again. He tends to put Mongrel in when he wants to, and hopefully he wants to more now. So,
well, this is probably the second most pressured side behind Freo in the comp, against probably the most unpressured side in the comp. So if that happens, it's going to get ugly.
Well, I think one of the things we can take from Neil Craig's tenure at the Demons, as long as it's been, or as head coach at least, is that Melbourne seem to be a lot more confident. They run the footy a bit harder. They back themselves to kick it a bit longer, and I think against a team like Sydney, I think to see how they go against a very good team, because we know they've played the Dogs, who aren't that great a side, and they won that, but they're looking a lot more confident, I think, and how they're backing themselves a bit more. So I think how they go against what should be a top 4 side, just to see how that game plan holds up. I think it's going to be interesting to see how they play. And Sydney, I don't think they play the MCG that well. I think recently they have, but long term it's not a very good ground for them. So there's a few things that might sit in Melbourne's favour, but overall Sydney are a very, very classy side and a much better team as a whole. So I think it's going to be a very comfortable win for them.
Well, just talking about the G, their last 2 times Melbourne have faced off against the Swans at the G was first in 2011, it was a draw, and 2010 when Melbourne won by 73 points.
Oh, that was a good game.
So there might be a chance, maybe not.
I think Cal Morton had 30 disposals that day.
That tells
the
the
glory
tale.
days, yeah.
I think that pretty much says it all. So I think Melbourne have some they have some points that they can make. So I think if they can put a decent score up on the board, I think they can show some signs. But overall, you can't ignore Sydney's good form, and you're going to have to tip them by at least 50 points.
And long term for Melbourne, on a note, they actually have a pretty good schedule running. Like, I mean, apart from this week and next week where they play Geelong, they've got Bulldogs, Brisbane, GWS, and Gold Coast all left. So they're not that far away from like St Kilda, who are only a win ahead, obviously percentage, but if they can win 2 of them, they're above St Kilda. So.
It's going to be especially tough today with Mumford and Sam Reid back in the side. You just ease them in against Melbourne. Tips for the game, boys?
I think we're tipping margin.
Yeah, absolutely. Sydney 10.
Sydney depending on how much the timer goes out, how much time they have left. So
they should romp in. And also good to see is he the co-captain still or the outright captain? Jack Grimes,
co-captain.
Yeah, he's good to see him back in.
That's good. Next up, Fremantle St Kilda.
Oh, wow.
Over in Subi.
Well, that'll be a close one. No Rewalt, no Mill, no forward line. They are so screwed.
No Cozzy.
No Cozzy. Well, that's the other thing. He'd probably be their number one forward, and he's not even in. They're relying on kids or mature ages. They've brought in
Tom Lee.
Tom Lee, and
They've even brought in Meister. I don't think they've brought in Meister. Tom Lee is the number one forward.
Who's their second forward then? Who have they got as their second forward?
That's a very good question.
Saunders?
Saunders. Forward of the century.
Stanley, I think. Rick Stanley. Although he's been named at full forward and he's been playing so well in the back line.
They've got McAvoy and Hickey.
Dennis Lane?
They'll rotate forward.
They're stuffed. It'll be over at quarter time.
And with Freo bringing in Barlow, Mundy, Sandlands and Pavlich.
It'll be like 8 goals to 1, if they've even got the 1. But 8 goals to 1 quarter time.
The funny thing is, there's people that are tipping, Saints for lowest score of the round, and they'll probably only kick 3 goals, and why did I say GWS? Freo by like 100 points or so, and I reckon, the Saints might get a run on the first quarter. I think, on an open, uncontested ground, I think they might do okay if they back themselves against, I think a lot like Melbourne, Sydney, if they can, they can back themselves, kicking it long and running it hard. I think, they can get it over the top of Freo's back line. But, overall, the Saints are a much lower quality unit. I think, Freo, we know how good they are. And I think, again, it's about tipping the margin and not who's going to win.
Yeah, I honestly think the opposite. I think Ross Lyon's going to go out and say, look, I want you, because they played Geelong last week, right? And they lost really due to Geelong's pressure. I think that Ross Lyon would have gone, look at how Geelong played. I want you to smother, St Kilda like Khal Drogo from Game of Thrones. And, it's something that they need to, get back into their system, just the old Ross Lyon style of playing, because they were really shown up against Geelong, who they, historically have quite a good record against. Fremantle easy. I don't think the Saints are going to kick 5 goals for the whole match.
No. Yeah, Fremantle.
I think Freo will get 3 figures, closer to 110, and just absolutely smash them. So.
Yep. And the game of the day, Essendon Port Adelaide.
Well, there's not much competition, let's be honest.
Port Adelaide have been amazing this past fortnight. Really bringing it to Sydney and Collingwood. The pressure's been off the charts. Hopefully we see it again, because Essendon have shown that they have manic pressure when they want to. I don't think it'll be the game for Dyson Heppel necessarily, but they've got a lot of other players that really relish the contested ball. Sorry,
he's not that
bad this year. He's averaging 9 touches for contested ball this year.
I can't help it. But yeah, Chad Wingard hopefully will have another good game. He's really shown that he's one of the stars. GWS was stupid for not taking him, and they look like losing players that went around him, like Bunting and Adams, back to Victoria. Port Adelaide have a decent record against Essendon, actually. In the 2000s, they've won 12 and Essendon have won 7. More recent times, I think Essendon maybe have they won their last match, but... Yeah.
Port aren't so bad at Etihad against us either, so it's going to be a lot closer than I think a lot of people are going to think.
They haven't won at Etihad since 2010, so they haven't got a very good recent record there at all.
Well, they've been very competitive, I think.
Yeah.
They've been they play Melbourne, Port Adelaide, better than a lot of interstate sides play in Melbourne. Like if they went to Subi, they normally get pummeled, but Melbourne is a more... less of a daunting prospect, and Hurley's lining up at full forward again. Why? Why?
You'll last a quarter before he does.
And then they swap Carlisle and Hurley around, as usual. But, yeah, I'm going to go with Essendon.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, I think Essendon by probably about 30, 40
Yeah,
points.
it's important for them too because the two teams below them, Sydney, Freo, are going to have a huge wins and they're going to overtake them and drop out of the top four if they lose. So
Angus Monfrey's against his old side as well.
Yep, and the percentage is quite similar as well. So it really is I know that they've got the draw of Sydney and Fremantle, but percentage is always important leading into the final series if they get to keep their points. Now, that's been another good show, our 50th show.
Yeah, plenty to come on Bound for Glory News this week. Make sure you stay tuned. Interviews from Dylan Vazari and Jake Hammond, Guy Dixon, Matthew Armstrong, and potentially Nick Graham. So, see how that turns out. And make sure give us a follow. Of course, Bound for Glory News with the 4 and Bound for Glory FM.
And Pete Williams as well on Twitter for his birthday.
Oh, hey.
Happy birthday. You've been listening to Bound for Glory.
Time,
And
next week.
Like us on Facebook as well. You've been listening to Bound for Glory. Have a good day.
Catch you later.
I'm invincible. I'm paying money. The girl's happy. She's got no money. I got my rocks off. Oh, how good is this?